Dopamine fasting, what is it? Why is it? And how do you use it to heal your mind? Today, that's what we're talking about. Boom! What's up? It is Andrew V here. On this channel, we talk about mastering your mind, transforming your body, and achieving freedom if the virus lets us fly into other countries. Stay tuned. Today, we're talking about dopamine fasting. So dopamine, in short, is the pleasure chemical. It's released in your brain to let you know that you're on the right track or what you're doing is a good thing. When we eat food, dopamine's released. When we play video games, dopamine is released. When you get a like, when you get a notification, dopamine is released. When you win an award, dopamine is released. When you put on your clothes, dopamine is released if you think you look good. When you go out and buy stuff, dopamine is released. All these things release dopamine. Now, inherently, there's no problem with dopamine. Without dopamine, there wouldn't be any pleasure in life, and it would be a pretty boring life. So why would you do a dopamine fast? Let me first tell you a quick story about dopamine fasting and how it literally changed my life. So, 2 years ago, I took the leap. I became an entrepreneur, self-employed, my life, my terms. I work my hours, I produce my own money, rah. Right? Wrong. I would wake up and I'd be checking hundreds of emails, text messages, likes, notifications. Before know it, my whole day was taken by literally responding to stuff on my phone and going to check a notification there, eat some food there. And the reality is the biggest problem that I had was staying focused and productive on something that was going to move the needle and earn me more money and build the business of my dreams. At the time, I really wanted to write a book. I had information that I wanted to share to the world, and no matter what I did, I could only get 1 or 2 hours of productive time a day. Fast forward to literally 2 years later, I can have productivity at an instant. All I have to do is implement a dopamine fast. It'll heal my mind, reset my dopamine, and I can punch out 8, 12, 16-hour work days with ease without using discipline. So if you want to learn any of that, then stay here because dopamine fasting is literally for you. It'll not only heal your mind, but it'll change your relationship with yourself. Stay tuned. Dopamine. Here's how my days started occurring. I would wake up and I'd open my eyes and I'd see an email. I'd look in an email, then I'd look in the other email, then I'd click a link in that email. Suddenly, I'm on YouTube. Suddenly, I'm watching a video. Now, I've looked and I'm like, who's this video made by? I've gone to the person's profile. Now I'm on their Instagram page. Okay, I realized, too much, put the phone down. Went to have breakfast. At breakfast, mum texts me. I text her back. Suddenly, we're in a group chat with my whole family. Before you know it, it's 1 p.m. I was meant to have done so much work, but for some reason, I'm still glued to my phone and literally responding to external stimuli. No work was done. Why? Why was this happening? Why was I becoming so unproductive, so driven by my mobile phone or other people's agendas? The reason is dopamine was driving my actions. Dopamine. The reality was that I was trying to get so much work done. I was trying to do 12, 16-hour days, and yet my whole day was driven by external stimulus, from responding to a message, to seeing a notification, to reading an email, to clicking a link, to following there, to watching other people live their lives. And I had to shake it off. I had to shake it off and realize what was happening. What was happening is I had a dopamine overproduction. And with that overproduction, what was occurring was dopamine was being produced in areas where it didn't take a lot of effort for me to go collect that dopamine. It doesn't take a lot to click an app on your phone and collect that like or notification. Ooh, Jeff liked me. Ooh, Marcy liked my photo. Ooh, ooh, ooh. It's just so easy to get. So all my brain wanted to do is go and collect the easy bits of dopamine. Yes, if you're thinking it, it does sound like an addict, because dopamine addiction is real. Fun fact, if you didn't know, most video games, most applications on the market that you see, that you use with technology, actually have dopamine reward systems built into them. If you've ever played Candy Crush, you'll play Candy Crush and suddenly when you feel like the game is getting too hard, it will give you an award or a free spin or a free multi-ball or a Powerball. None of it means anything, but why do they do it? They do it because it releases a small amount of dopamine which allows you to stay on the platform and keep going. So a dopamine fast inherently is there to stop the madness. Stop the madness. You've got to stop producing dopamine from all these sources which were all around us. So there I was, trapped by my phone computer notifications, and I said enough. So I've researched on what a dopamine fast is. But there I had a dilemma. See, all this dopamine was causing me pleasure. You know, a notification, a like, a message from a friend. It's nice. It's community. It shows that you're not alone. It's a nice feeling. That's what dopamine gives you, a nice feeling. And when I read about dopamine fasting, it said you have to take out all your dopamine producing activities. And that would leave you with no pleasure. Now on paper, that is what it is. A dopamine fast is to exclude, to stop, to not do any activity that produces dopamine. Now dopamine is still produced naturally, so you can't eliminate dopamine altogether. So the very nature of dopamine fasting can't actually fully occur. But what we refer to dopamine fasting is fasting or abstaining from dopamine producing activities that produce dopamine and aren't really useful for our growth or for us to achieve anything in life, really. So, if we're talking dopamine fasting, sounds simple. You take all the things that produce dopamine for you that aren't useful and you abstain from them. If you want to do a dopamine fast properly, you have to try and abstain from everything. Depending on how addicted you are to your dopamine producing activities, you have to abstain from all of it. If it's sex, if it's drugs, if it's computer games, if it's Facebook, if it's Instagram, if it's notifications, if it's all of it, you have to abstain from all of it. That is what a dopamine fast is. But how does it actually heal your mind? Let me give you an example. Have you ever tried and started eating chocolate, for example, and you said you were only going to have 1 or 2 pieces? And then before you know it, you had the whole box. Or maybe you had 1 or 2 pieces the first day, 3 or 4 pieces the next day, but then by the 3rd day, you ate the whole box. Why does that happen? Simple. Dopamine, when you're on flatline, when there's no dopamine being produced, and you introduce a substance or a notification or something that produces a dopamine, it produces a hit of dopamine. Let's say a level 5 hit of dopamine from 1 piece of chocolate. The next time you eat the chocolate in the same sitting, Instead of producing a 5, it produces a 4 level of dopamine. You eat another piece and it produces only a 3.5 level of dopamine. So then the next day, you need to eat double the amount of chocolate to get the same 5 hit of dopamine. What you have here is addiction 101. All drug addiction, all alcohol, all intoxicant addictions are simply a dopamine overload where you need to hit it harder to get more dopamine to retain the same level of pleasure. So how do we actually heal our mind? It's very simple. When you go on a dopamine fast, you take your dopamine receptor that has been getting levels 5, little hits of 3, level hits of 6, and you actually just give it 0 hits. Scientifically, what happens is your dopamine receptor becomes more sensitive because it's not getting any dopamine. It's used to getting a heap amount of dopamine and suddenly it's not getting any. So the little dopamine receptor sits there and is like, maybe we're not receiving the signal. Maybe we'll spread our wires more. Maybe there's more signals out there. We'll become more sensitive. Then you don't give it any more dopamine. So it becomes more sensitive and more sensitive. I don't know if I'm doing a good dopamine impression, but more sensitive. You get it. So when you fast from dopamine, you make your dopamine receptor more sensitive to dopamine itself. How does that heal your mind? Well, it's simple. The more you fast from dopamine, the more will simple tasks and simple things provide you with a similar amount of pleasure that you used to experience from having to binge something, or being an addict to something, or being an addict to your phone. So what I did, I turned off all notifications. I turned off all notifications on my phone, 0, nada. I would check the phone once a day. I stopped watching videos, stopped having sex, stopped eating sugar, stopped eating fatty foods, and in a week's time, I had actually started and almost half finished a book that I wanted to write that I had been holding off for the last 2 years. And that's the real power of dopamine fasting. Now, obviously, life throws dopamine at us from every angle, everywhere. So it is unrealistic to be dopamine fasting forever. But dopamine fasting is useful in periods of time of productivity, in periods of time when you feel like you've lost control and you don't have enough time to be productive because you are being glued and pulled towards activities that produce pleasure and dopamine. In very simple terms, dopamine fasting will heal your mind. Because when you stop overproducing dopamine, your brain levels out back to 0. And again, things that take time, things that take work, things that don't happen instantly, again start rewarding you with dopamine. You'll find yourself more productive. You'll find yourself more alert, more energetic. You've just got more aliveness in you. That's what a dopamine fast will do. If you've got a dopamine fast that you've done, or you've got dopamine fast questions, put them in the comments. I answer all comments for 48 hours after this video is released. Put it in there. I'm interested to hear your experience or your questions. As I said, on this channel, we talk about mastering your mind as one of the main topics. So if you want to subscribe, like the video, hit the notification bell, you're probably only going to get smarter. I release weekly, and until the next time, do a dopamine fast.